Homestuck has trolls in it. Shocking, I know. But they don't really show up for the first 1,000, 2,000 pages. And they weren't even conceived for a while after Act 1. They weren't planned to be a part of the story, but when Homestuck comes up, it's what people think of. Troll cosplay, troll sonas, troll romance. But, trolls are pretty weird. While the world building has inspired a lot of people, it's kinda just a big joke, like a parody of bad alien world building. Trolls are always talking like weird sci-fi aliens, and characters constantly point out how dumb they sound.
It just feels really silly when we say things like the John human in confidence amongst ourselves.
We have to commit to this. Stay in character, you know?
The troll word for stuff is just that thing in literal descriptive words. Think pan, protein shoot, nutrition plateau. Their movie titles are super long and descriptive, and the story knows all this is ridiculous. Act 4 is when the troll chats start to become a constant, and it's chock full of bits and gags about their weird culture.
Kind of like something you wouldn't know about, a troll delicacy called cotton candy.
We have cotton candy, dumbass.
Now, the trolls have this advanced messaging app that lets them see and talk to the humans at any given point along their journey, letting them scroll back and forth through time. And the story takes full advantage of this to do all sorts of wacky time travel shit. We see all of these interesting relationships develop, something Homestuck is already good at, but now it's non-linear. Kanai and rows of conversations in a whole messed up order that I couldn't really explain. Carcat messages John backwards in time, his first conversation is John's last, and so forth. So you get to see a character develop partially in reverse. Doing weird shit like this is Homestuck's bread and butter, so it's best to just get used to it. So the kids get more acquainted with the trolls right before Act 4 ends on a bunch of cliffhangers. Then in Act 5, we cut to the troll universe and get to see their backstories. We learned a lot about troll society, and it's still pretty tongue-in-cheek. Like, there's a troll Will Smith, trolls are raised by fog monsters, troll culture is opposed to fashion, most people just wear a t-shirt and jeans, there's a fucking juggalo troll. Part of this is trolling the audience, like, oh, you wanted to know what happened to our main characters? Well, here's a sweaty muscle pervert and a bunch of catgirl roleplay and shipping charts. Speaking of which, troll romance is one of the most unique concepts introduced in Homestuck. It's notoriously convoluted and conceptual, and the story knows it. Everything just kind of pauses at one point for a long-winded and somewhat condescending explanation of what troll romance is and how it works. Here's my best jab at the short version. Okay, so trolls have 4 flavors or quadrants of romance. One for each of the suits in a deck of cards. Heart romance is called matespritship. It's basically just romantic love. You like someone and you want to reproduce with them. In the spade quadrant, you have a kissmesis. This is where you hate someone, but you still want to reproduce with them. It's a nemesis that you want to kiss. The diamond quadrant is called Moira allegiance. Your Moirail is someone you like strongly, but don't want to reproduce with. But it's not just friendship. You can only have one Moirail, and it's a thing that formally starts and ends. When 2 people stop being Moirails, it's referred to as breaking up. The club quadrant is called auspisticists. This one is probably the most confusing by human standards. Basically, one person acts as a mediator between 2 people who hate each other to prevent them from destroying each other or from reproducing. The tone of this explanation is pretty condescending, while going on about how human romance is just too simple and linear to be able to understand the complexities of troll relationships. Troll romantic comedies are described more like thrillers or puzzles to be solved by the characters. And all of this might lead you to assume some things that aren't exactly true. For one, you might assume that these relationships are exclusive to trolls. Like, humans can't be in any of these relationships outside of the heart quadrant. They even say that there's some relationships and events in Homestuck that make no sense to us, but that trolls would immediately understand. But that's not really true. I mean, Moirail is just a way of having a best friend. You could go to one of your friends and ask them to be your one and only exclusive best friend. We just don't do that. And while IRL spade romance is rare, maybe that's because we don't have a word for it. There are certain popular ships that are kind of spadesy. Enemies to lovers is sort of like that. And hey, 2 people that hate each other having a kid? That just sounds like me and my wife. Oh. Anyway, they do say point blank towards the end of Act 6 that relationships between sentient beings can basically take any shape, and that humans who spend more time around the trolls understand the quadrants more and more. So, You might also assume that there are actually 4 quadrants, and that a serious relationship between trolls would fall into one of those quadrants, but that's just not the case. Troll relationships are consistently hard for even them to define. 2 trolls might each have a different view of their relationship than the other. One person might want a kismesis while the other wants a mate sprit. Their relationship might shift and change depending on their mood, but still, the trolls try and force these relationships into their existing frameworks. So even though their understanding of romance has more terms, it actually makes it harder for them to understand. Every troll is constantly agonizing over their relationships, what quadrant people fall under, who to be with. This is made worse by the fact that trolls see relationships as a matter of destiny. They believe somewhere in the universe is a set of people destined to fill their quadrants, which creates a lot of pressure to find them. Karkat ends Act 5, Act 1 kinda lost. Yeah, his home planet was just destroyed, and he's also one of the last remaining trolls in his universe, and something's gone so wrong with their game session that they're all probably dead if they can't find a way out. But he's also longing for a kismesis, and he doesn't see any suitable candidates. Act 5, Act 2 opens with an extended animation sequence, where Karkat, the main troll, sees John, the main human, for the first time. It's one of those simple, melancholic sequences that Homestuck does really well, but then, plot twist, Karkat has a hate crush on John. Then we see their first conversation from Karkat's perspective, but since the story is so non-linear, this is their last conversation from John's perspective. So this is also like a flash forward. John won't be here for like 1500 pages, so we don't yet know why he's wearing these weird pajamas, why he's on Dave's planet, or where he seemed to learn so much troll stuff. But also, this means that John already knows Karkat. They're good friends from his perspective, but to Karkat they've never spoken.
My hate is the lifeblood that pulses through the veins of your universe! It is my gift to you! You're welcome for that, you ungrateful piece of shit!
Hi, Karkat!
What?
So when Karkat confesses to John, John's basically finding out that his friend was into him the whole time. And while John turns him down, it's the way he does it that I find interesting.
Hey, I don't have a problem with your weird sort of alien hate-love thing. It's just that,
What?
I'm not a homosexual.
So while trolls have a very complex view of relationships, they have basically no concept of sexual orientation. A same-sex troll couple is treated the exact same as any other troll couple, and it's not really important for their reproduction. But trolls do still have gender preferences. Kanaya, for example, is really only interested in other women. In human terms, she's a lesbian, but she wouldn't call herself that. Trolls consider relationships more case by case. Kanaya just happens to have a strong type, and that type is women. Again, there might not be anything that different about trolls besides just their culture. The way humans tend to view sexuality is that everyone has a specific sexual orientation that's immutable from birth, and you just have to figure out what it is. In a way, the human view of sexuality revolves around a kind of destiny. But none of this is exactly real. Like, yeah, of course people have gender preferences, but there's no reason to think they're completely unchanging from birth. Besides, the whole idea that people are attracted to specific genders is kind of silly when gender itself is so fluid. This framework can be really restrictive. Even if you know you'd be accepted no matter your sexuality, reconsidering things still means changing a fundamental part of you. How many people would be in same-sex relationships if they didn't have to think of themselves as being gay? Now, John's only way of understanding male-male relationships is through his human culture. He doesn't seem to be considering whether he'd actually date Karkat, and he's not really homophobic. He's just never been into men previously, so he must not be into Karkat. End of story. For the record, John has a lot of reasons to reject Karkat here. I'm not saying they'd be perfect together, but the only reason he gives is his sexuality. Meanwhile, this line of logic is literally alien to Karkat. He does not get it.
I'm not a homosexual.
What the hell is that?
It's like when a boy likes another boy. Or, I guess, hates in this case.
Humans have a word for that?
Yes.
How is that even a thing?
Shrug. It just is.
And the interaction gets rounded out perfectly with my favorite line in all of Homestuck.
Human romance sure is weird.
Because, yeah, it is. Up until this point, the focus has been on the weirdness of troll romance, but in this single line, the focus is brought back on us. In the way that trolls have all these constructs that affect how they understand the world, but ultimately make things a lot more confusing, we have our own weird constructs. It's one of those moments in Homestuck that is most clearly saying something, but it's also doing so in an interesting and subtle way. Now, I'm not even really a John Catter. I'm not saying John Cat had to happen, but I do wish it was a bit more important in the story. What this conversation means is that Karkat can't undo his confession. Remember, you can't change the future. So no matter what he says to John in the past, he'll eventually find out. So this could have been a secret hanging over Karkat's head for the rest of Act 5. And it could have been a nice emotional drama to match the universe-ending drama. But at one point, Karkat basically lets it slip anyway, which doesn't make any sense because John still acts surprised in the first conversation, even though he should pretty much know already. This feels like it should be in big, impactful twists, but it's kind of just dropped shortly after. Karkat and John eventually chat about this in Act 6, and it's fine, mostly. It basically affirms what I already thought. Right before one of the climaxes, all the main characters just sit around and talk for a while, and I just wish this was woven into the story more. Act 6 is a whole other video, whatever. And what Homestuck does right with troll romance, it does pretty poorly with other subjects. The quadrants are clearly just social constructs, and reality often doesn't line up with them, and that gets used to poke fun at our social constructs that don't match reality. But the same can't be said for the blood caste. Okay, so trolls live under a caste system defined by blood color. And you might assume that this is also a social construct, that blood color doesn't really matter, and that it's meant to be a parody of real-world racial hierarchy. But no, blood color is an innate biological thing carrying physical and vaguely spiritual ramifications. I know you could read this as a parody of fantasy races, but there's just not much there. I'm not the first person to point this out, but I feel like I still had to mention it, especially when the two themes are handled so differently. Ultimately, Homestuck handles sexuality in a unique and really powerful way. Because queerness is so normalized, it gets to tell a story about queerness that isn't just about struggling against bigotry, but also isn't a wish-fulfillment coffee shop AU. None of the characters in Homestuck are really homophobic at all. John makes it clear he has no issues with gay people. But certain humans still struggle with internalized bigotry, because coming out still means changing what you are in human culture. Overall, it's just one of the most interesting things about Homestuck. Truly everything in this scene is working together. The dialogue writing, the timeline nonsense, the themes, the alien world building, the humor, and it does all this in such a succinct fashion that it can all be summed up in just, like, a screenshot. It's really quite good.
Wow, what a video, huh? Had a good time working on this one. I like Homestuck and I like talking about it. I was only able to get this out as soon as I did because of the Heathrow closure and delayed a flight I was supposed to be getting on. But yeah, I also missed the night at KBBQ to finish this up, so, you know, I hope you enjoyed it, because I don't know how many I'm going to get left of that. There's people who I'm not going to see next semester who are leaving, so yeah, I really hope you enjoyed that video. Hope it was worth it to you. Leave a like, a comment, and a subscribe if you can. Well, let me know what you think about this thing, and I'll Homestuck you later.